Oh, that's hot. That's hot.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Joburg Arena Pokemon Go Voyager Cup analysis. I'm Timmeh and I'll be guiding you through this video. Due to the quantity of the Pokemon we'll need to go through, I'll be splitting this video into two parts. Part 1 being a rundown of the rules of the format and Generation 1 and 2 picks, while Part 2 will cover Generation 3 and 4 as well as the remaining generations. Now, we will look at the overall rules of the Cup and help us get an understanding of the overall format. Then we will be looking at the selections of Pokemon that's available. This Cup has broken down teammate selections into slots. In a team of 6, slot 1 to 5 will be assigned to Generation 1 to 5, with slot 5 uniquely assigned for everything that is currently outside of Gen 1 to 4. This means that things like Alolan forms, which is actually Gen 7, will also fall into slot 5. Slot 6 is used as a wildcard slot. You can select from any generation, however generations restrictions are put into generations. So look at the restricted list highlighted in red here. If a Pokemon is on this list, it cannot be part of slot 6. Outside of this list, any Pokemon is allowed in slot 6. Now that we have an understanding of the rules, we have broken down the list of Pokemon available into their generation or slots, and we'll be going through each Pokemon in some detail. Please note this is by no means a detailed analysis, merely on the Pokemons that stand out in each slot. It will take too long to cover every single available choice. If we have missed out on a pick you may have interest in, please feel free to drop in the comments and we'll do our best to give you some recommendations. In slot 1, we're only allowed to pick Generation 1 Pokemon, and here we'll be going over some of the Pokemon that stands out. Our first Pokemon is Venusaur. It has a good combination of typing in Poison and Grass that covers each other's weaknesses, and impressive overall stats to boot. Vinewood will charge up Frenzy Plant quickly and will do very solid damage. Sludge Bomb is here for other grass types or when opponents may want to try and switch in a potential counter. This move also makes Venusaur an excellent counter against some of the more popular fairies in this format. Next we have Blastoise. It has an impressive bulk that can be supplemented by the use of Skull Bash, and with Ice Beam it can act as a budget Azumarill and have similar function. It's not Azumarill though, and despite its bulk, it lacks the same level of threat, and there are arguably better picks in Gen 1. Moving on to Charizard, the flying fire type that comes with two viable moveset that can help plug certain gaps in your team. Specifically Air Slash. Specifically the Air Slash version can function as a soft counter versus Altaria with spammy Dragon Claws. While the Fire Spin version serves as a great fire nuker, be aware though that Charizard is dependent on baiting out opponents' shields and lacks staying power. Our next pick is Wigglytuff. It is blessed with normal typing mixed with fairy typing, meaning a lovely ghost resistance. Coupled by great bulk and a fantastic damage with Charm, you have a force to be reckoned with. It will do great damage versus fighting Dark and Dragons that have potential to simply outbulk in certain neutral matchups. Just be aware that it builds up to its charge move slowly and are still restricted due to limitation in weakness to Steel and Poison. Next we have Clefable, which have a similar if not slightly less performance to Wiggly. It is unrestricted, so it can be an excellent candidate should you be looking for a Charmer in your slot 6 flex pick. It also have an arguably better charge move in the form of Meteor Mash. However, please be aware that it is not as bulky as Wiggly and does not have the normal typing. So Ghost types can now be a threat with neutral damage as well. We have Lapras as our next pick. It is an anti-air Pokemon that can also be customized to do certain other jobs. Skull Bash can be used to enhance its staying power, and the damage of this move is also nothing to be scoffed at. The Water Gun variant will diminish the uniqueness of its anti-air role, but it can add an extra dimension in bringing wins against rock, ground, and steel. Just know that it is a restricted pick in this slot and you'll be giving up on Venusaur or Hypno. Speaking of which, we have Hypno coming up next. This Pokemon has an impressive bulk and can be customized to bring a unique flexibility to your team. Ice Punch and Thunder Punch can both cover very different things, while Confusion is a great damaging fast move. Shadow Ball will be the most popular for most teams as it does great neutral damage and gives Hypno a potential ace up its sleeve against ghost types seeking to switch in. Mew is unique in that it has access to a lot of different charge moves as well as fast moves. There are a lot of very popular combos that allow Mew to be a true flexible pick. The downside to this is that these combos are locked behind a wall of RNG and getting the right moves can be very expensive on the TM. It is also restricted, so the argument can be made that you might as well just pick another restricted Pokemon that can do the same job. Up next we have Machamp, which functions as a great and spammy counter to Steel, Dark, Ice, and even some surprise wins against some flyers, thanks to it having Rock Slide as its charge move. Be aware that this cup is making certain fairies, psychics, and ghosts popular, so this will diminish Machamp's usability. Then we're going to have a look at Victory Bell. While normal Victory Bell is certainly a force to be reckoned with, the Shadow version of Victory Bell can bring down things like Haunter, with the attack stat making Shadow Victory Bell an incredibly threatening Pokemon. However, with the Shadow boost, it also means that it loses out on its already relatively thin bulk. So be aware of the trade-off when you use Victory Bell. Haunter will be a menace for most things that are not normal, Dark, Mudboys, or Steel. It is unique that even with neutral damage, it can fell a lot of opponents. Especially good will be in the no-shield late battle situation where Haunter can be a real menace. Be aware of its low bulk though. We have Dewgong as our next pick and it serves as a similar role to Lapras. However, it requires double legacy moves in Ice Shard and Icy Wind in order to function, so the barrier to entry is relatively high. Icy Wind can set up win conditions for Dewgong's teammates and could potentially win a lot of matches. It is, however, one-dimensional in terms of gameplay, and opponents can potentially work around this Pokemon. Next Pokemon we have is Poliwrath, combining good bulk and unique coverage in the form of Mudshot, Dynamic Punch, and Ice Punch. It is one of the few fighters that are a menace to flyers with bulk and Ice Punch alone. Unfortunately, it is completely warped by one of the most top picks in this format, which is Azumarill, which means it might not be a popular pick. Dragonair is a callback from Timeless Cup. If you have a good one set aside, it has certain advantage here. Aquatile will bring wins against Bastiodon and other steel types, while fast move Dragon Breath is deadly to most elemental typings and also beats Altaria. Dragon Pulse can bring in big nuking potential, while Wrap is a worthy baiting move. Shadow Dragonair gives us some of its bulk and brings in more threat to the already damaging Dragon Breath. Just be aware that you are trading in the staying power by getting the Shadow boost. In our last pick for slot 1, we have Ninetales. It is arguably the next best thing in terms of a fire-type Pokemon under Alolan Marowak. With Fire Spin bringing up spammy Psyshock and punishing overheats, Ninetale is an excellent alternative as a pure fire type. You can even modify its second charge move to have a unique coverage with Solar Beam. It is, however, hard to justify picking Ninetales over certain other type of Pokemon that are in Gen 1. But if you have a great one lying in the bag, now might be a good time to try and use it. Now we'll look at some recommended pick for slot 2. You can only pick Pokemons from Generation 2 for this slot. Starting off, we have the most popular pick for Voyager Cup, Azumarill. This Pokemon has it all. Anti-Flyer in Ice Beam, Bulk in Fairy typing, and nuking potential with Hydro Pump. Your only real limitation is in the fact that you have to pick between Ice Beam, Play Rough, or Hydro Pump. Ice Beam brings some unique anti-air winds, and Play Rough allows Azumarill to be more threatening against the inevitable mirror match. Azu is a solid pick for this cup. Just be aware that everyone will either be running it or preparing to run against it. Next we have Meganium, probably your best bet if Venusaur is not your main pick in Gen 1. Earthquake gives it unique coverage against things like Registeel and Bastiodon, but if you do decide to use Meg for this cup, make sure you have one with decent attack IV, as some steel types are not a guaranteed win if a Meganium does not pass certain attack stat breakpoints. My recommendation is to run some simulations on pvppoke.com and see how your Meganium stacks up. Our next Pokemon is Mantine, uniquely having flying and water typing and netting notable wins over Meganium and Azumarill. It is a threat to fighters, fire, grass, and can even threaten Altaria. The downside, Bubble Beam gameplay is very shield baiting centric. Mantine's unique coverage means that it can be a worthwhile pick for your flex slot. However, there can also be other things that can do the same job. So if you're a fan of mind games, Mantine might be something that's for you. Our next Pokemon is Skarmory, also known as the AC-130 gunship of the Pokemon world. It brings a unique combination of flying and steel. It is an absolutely solid pick, but it is also a restricted pick. So that means that if you pick Skarmory, you will be missing out on Azumarill and Umbreon. However, have a look at what it threatens. It will kill most fighters, grass, and fairies, and it can also take down certain neutral fights. The downside of picking Skarm, of course, is that you will be giving up on a lot of other things, and potentially you can't really justify what you'll be giving up with Azumarill by having Skarm. The next Pokemon we have is Umbreon, which has an impressive bulk that allows it to muscle out a lot of wins with simply just neutral damage. As well as to be a thorn in many Psychic and Ghost typing side, think of it as the near perfect safe switch. It can even threaten fellow Dark types with its Community Day move of Last Resort. The downside of picking up Umbreon is that you'll be using up your restricted slot, which means you lack the flexibility of picking Azumarill or the anti-fighter of Skarmory. Next up we have Lantern, which is an electric and water type. Basically the water type that hunts other water types. Azumarill, Lapras are all prime targets for this Pokemon. It can even chalk up wins against ground moves, the ground moves spanning Alola Marowak. It can also be a menace to other flying type Pokemons that could potentially come in to try and get wins against it. However, be aware that you would probably want to run the Spark version of this Pokemon. Quagsire fulfills the healthy alternative choice for those that would like to run ground and water type but wants to keep their slot 3 selection open. It also uniquely has Acid Spray for those who want to have a more mind game centric style of gameplay. Stone Edge will give it an edge against flyers, and it is also a damaging move against a lot of grass types that could potentially come in for it. However, due to its ground and water typing, it will lose to grass very quickly. So ideally you want to have a Stone Edge ready when a grass switch in. It can also pack Sludge Bomb, which makes some choices make it a good choice against some fairies. However, most picks will probably go for Earthquake with Stone Edge. Lastly, we have Suicune. It has a guaranteed debuff in the form of Bubble Beam, and Snarl will get to it a lot quicker. But please bear in mind that gameplay for Suicune is based on mind games once again. It has to land Hydro Pump in order for it to win, which can make it a bit one-dimensional. However, if you have one made from Ferocious Cup days and would like to get some more mileage out of it, it can be a solid pure water type for you. I, however, would not justify making one from scratch due to the 200,000 Stardust costs it'll probably take to just make one for the Voyager Cup. Thank you so much. This concludes part 1 for our video. Part 2 will be coming soon.